Hey traders, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, November 30th. So, first day of the week, last day of the month, and some really interesting price action again for the day. Let's talk about the indices first, but really kind of my theme of the day here is that you can see it to the bottom of the left of your screen. The market breadth was pretty weak for the day, right? For overall, right? And if we look at the sector distribution here, performance change from the open, there's a lot of sectors that didn't do too well today. Some of them were more value, which I know, there is an emphasis on growth. When you open up Twitter and you look at what people are tweeting about, there's definitely a bigger skew towards growth names, no doubt about it. So when the value names tend to go down, you don't really hear too many people complaining about it too much, as long as what we kind of saw today, which was more growth outperforming. But yeah, it was pretty weak breadth, I would say, overall. However, there's continues to be pockets of momentum, pockets of strength out there. For the overall performance of the indices for the day, SPY fell 40 basis points. Not a big move from the open, but there was a little bit of that sell off in the beginning of the day. The Qs did finish positive for the day. Again, when you look at the intraday performance, it doesn't kind of, you would kind of look at this and you're like, oh, the indices didn't really move that much. But they clearly did after the open. IWM was the big underperformer for the day. That was down small caps were down 1.7% for the day, and they slid the most too. They didn't have as much of recovery as the Qs and the S&P. Bonds were a non-factor today. They were flat. Gold didn't do much of anything at all today either. Started the day lower, had a little bit of strength, and then finished. Didn't move too much from the open. Silver actually rallied a bit, and the VIX at one point I think was positive on the day, but you could see down 9% from the open and down 1.3% for the day. Again, this is the performance for the day. But again, I like to look at what kind of changed over the course of the trading session. Big outperformance from the pot stocks today. There was there's a possible ruling, I guess, and a lot of these pot stocks, small cap pot stocks particularly, did pretty well, up 4% for the day. They did rally a little bit over the session too. They were up. They added 1.5% through the session. The gold miners, kind of interesting. They were up 2%. So I don't know, is this a turning point for gold? I still think with gold, I don't really want to go too far into the weeds here with gold. But I do think that there's some levels to watch below. And again, this doesn't have to be taken out, but there is this 1756 VPOC. It looks like buyers are kind of coming into this a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. And then on the flip side, when I say I don't know, it means I'm not sure that the bottom is in yet. And then Bitcoin on the flip side, it does feel like money is being taken out of gold and going into Bitcoin. I don't know that for a fact, but just by looking at the relative performance of the two, it does look like somebody is going into Bitcoin and out of gold. So pretty interesting performance there between the two, and also very interesting too to see how quickly, I mean really quickly, the dip was bought in Bitcoin, and just like that, we're back out to new highs and burned off all those overbought levels that I had talked about. Right, so it is amazing how fast this market is moving. Usually, something like this would take maybe a week or so to kind of regain its footing. Nope, one day. That's the market that we are dealing with nowadays. So let's talk about just a couple other areas that I see had strength today. The biotech's kind of continuation from Friday, where that half a day trading session was very strong in the biotech area. I think the clean energy names, this was something that was just a matter of time. PBW was very strong, very, 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 very strong for the last couple of weeks. So a little bit of a correction there. Same thing in your solar stocks. The energy stocks gave back some of their gains too. They were both down 6%. So clean and your more traditional energy stocks, they were all down. Remember, for a couple of weeks they were going up together. So which is highly unusual. So, well, today they both fell. The banks weren't any place to really be, even though there wasn't much of a move in interest rates today. But it did seem like a rotation out of some value areas. I did hear about that. Bloomberg mentions like every day at 350 what the MOC numbers were, and they mentioned there was about 900 million for sale. But they mentioned it was in a lot of sectors like energy, banks, utilities, and REITs that were for sale. So, another one of these little bit of a mini rotation, out of. You could see utilities underperform. So again, a lot of big, numbers down, but if you don't own a lot of these areas, you really didn't feel it for the day. All right, so let's talk about. So let me go over just the price action in the indices for the day. I did send out, at Tribeca Trade Group every Monday, Wednesday. We do a Q&A session, right? I always give like my market thoughts on what's happening for the day, option activity, what we're seeing, and what's interesting on the tape. And so that's every Monday and Wednesday, and then Friday we do like a look ahead video, thoughts ahead of the weekend. So I released that video. It's about a 40-minute video. Sometimes I usually talk for about anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes, depending on how many questions there are and what's going on in the market and option activity. So I'm not going to rehash that whole thing. This will be a shorter video for the day, but I did send this out. You can go on my Twitter feed, right? And you could just click here if you want to do that. And if you've been thinking about joining the Tribeca Trade Group, it's a great kind of intro. Right, I get these questions a lot of times on, oh, what is it like, what's it like in your room? Like, can you tell us like how like the alert system goes, and what kind of like trades are you doing? And yet every day in these videos, I show it to people for free. So it takes like about it doesn't take very long to kind of research. Like instead of I had somebody the other day, they asked me like 15 questions. Like all you have to do is watch the end of day video, and you're gonna get the answer. Here's the trades that we do like right in front of you. Some stocks, some options. I discussed that a little bit in the in that Q&A video today. That I trade a little bit more stock because it's a bit easier for me to manage, right? Because I am running a trading room all day long, and I feel with options you want to keep closer attention because they're more sensitive, right? So you want to keep up on those option positions, especially the shorter term ones, right? So I do, trade a lot of stock, but most of my trades can be done either way, right? They can either be done via options or via stock. So there's really not much of a difference. What I'm doing for the most part is, looking at a chart to see how it's setting up, and then looking for a lot of breakouts of consolidation. A lot of things that I think are kind of ripe for a swing trade. Sometimes a day trade too, but I'm more of a swing trader than anything else. But my trades, there's no like you can choose based on your comfort level whether or not you trade the stock, or you go for a swing trade out for a couple months of maturity, or if you want something short term, you can obviously do that in shorter term options. It's really a personal preference and what you feel comfortable with. But I get the question all the time. Oh well, what how come you did this one in stock and this It's really it's something that you develop over time as a trader. What you're really comfortable with. All right, so that's a little bit about that. Let's talk about some of the trades for the day. But again, like I said, you can really kind of get a flavor for what we do by going into that video, and also just as a member, right? You can get a good idea of what the level of analysis is, and how we break it down, right? So you can go here, you can click on this link right on that's pinned to my profile page. To go ahead and sign up to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. All right, so some trades, a couple that we started on Friday or towards the end of the week. This one trade, you don't hear too many people talking about it. This is a name that you can only trade with stock. That's why I don't think a lot of people on Twitter Talked a lot about this name because I think there's a ton of just straight up option traders. By the way, one of the things is you can always trade either or, right? Just as I mentioned, right? Personal preference with what I'm doing, but right, I see a lot of people that just neglect stock trading. You can make a lot of money trading stock, and it's to me, it is a little bit easier. But something like this, I only held for a couple days. I think 2 days, and kind of hit my upside target. So I took it off. 144 was where I entered this trade in 2 days. Got up to 172. It's just a lot easier, when you're trading something like this to, well, number one, there are no options in this one, but so I got out of this trade, right at the end of the day, at 175. Another trade that we did on Friday was, that I added again, and I wasn't really looking to add a lot of risk on Friday, but as I said in this weekend's videos too. I know, we know that sentiment is running super hot right now. And, what that means to me is that the market is getting very close to being priced to perfection, meaning any news on the tape is going to bring it down, a little bit, like we saw today, right? So before we go into more of the day's trades, but, very, we moved down so easily, and I think that's just because I'm not sure what really caused this. I know that New York City numbers came out and they were showing like a higher than expected positivity COVID rate. So I'm not sure if that just added or if it was just a sell program that went through. But the point is, when we get to such a high sentiment level that we are now, I think you're going to, in my opinion, I'm not making any predictions, right? And this video is for information purposes only. I'm not giving out any advice or recommendations. So it's basically just what I think. I think we'll see more of these things. People are going to take some profits here and there. Funds, right? Funds who have been, accumulating for the last couple of weeks, they're bound to take some profits along the way. When that happens, you're going to see you're going to see moves like these intraday. However, what we do at this point is kind of just watch where our levels are, right? This is what I call an S&P roadmap, and that's what we send out to members every day, is basically these levels to watch. So it kind of gets you, when we see these levels start to kind of come, price kind of gravitate into them, just as we did for the Qs. This went into top of value, kind of gives you a sense that, oh yeah, we're moving down, pretty quickly. We're moving pretty quickly to the downside, but we've got support, right? So I talked about that also in the midday video about how we kind of handle that and how that helps in your overall trading. But look at that recovery. Pretty impressive, right? So again, we're continuing to see impressive price action. Yes, it does help to, have not be like, for me, to have plenty of ammunition to kind of counter when we do have, some market dips, right? So, so let me just continue with what I was saying here. Apps was a setup from Friday, right? That worked very well. We got up to what, 45.84 in this one. So I think I talked about this in Friday's video too. So if you watch Friday's video, you got the heads up. In this one, even if you didn't get into the trade, but I mentioned this was one of my favorite setups. Also in the weekend video, so it's definitely covered this one a number of times. So interesting what happened to me in Apple here, right? So again, I went over this in the midday video, so I won't drag this one out here, but. Apple had a nice day. It sold off a little bit at the end of the day, but we just haven't seen it too many like big days for Apple recently. Will we get some continuation here? I don't know. And it does have to break basically 120. We've got some resistance to get through. A lot of call activity in Apple today, so we'll see if they come back in and kind of push this thing above resistance, which is 120. So if you missed Apple today, I wouldn't get that worried about it because it still has to get through resistance. But for me, like I was sitting with an Apple trade for a while in the January 125 calls. So what did I do today? Once I saw, of course, as soon as I take something off, it gets double upgraded. Once by, once by Loop Capital, and Morgan Stanley also raised their price target in Apple. So it's every once in a while you're gonna get lucky and you're gonna get unlucky in trading. This is a little bit unlucky, but hey, I hopped right back into it and was able to take multiple price targets. So stick with it. Sometimes this happens where your timing isn't right, where either you take off a trade or it could be a number of different things where your timing isn't right. Just so I lost I lost about 1% chasing this thing in the first 5 minutes because Apple ran right from the open. It's not a big deal. Losing 1%, right? I think a lot of traders um, get very hooked on something like that, right? And they're like, oh, geez, or they're like, oh, it's up 2%, I missed it, right? If it hasn't really done anything, just like Apple, right? I mean, if you look at what Apple's done over the last couple months, it's done nothing. So, in my opinion, you really didn't miss anything, right? So, really, like what I would be looking for in Apple is a move as a breakout of value, and then a move up here, which is a hell of a lot bigger than 2%, right? So if you miss that very first move, as I said, retail traders get very hung up on that. Oh, I missed it, right? And then if you look back here, right, this move on earnings, here's what Apple did, and oh, I missed it. I missed Apple. Well, that was just the beginning of the move because it went from $103 all the way up to 130. There, if you were up here, then you could say, oh, I missed it. But this stock hasn't done anything, and it still needs to break 120. All right, so there's just my opinion on Apple. A couple names. I saw this. There was a nice post out. I'm trying to remember who it was on Twitter, and they mentioned that, which is a really good point. And we're going to talk about AMD in a minute, but there's been so many semiconductors that have had such good strength to them. And I know retail traders, they get focused on just a couple stocks, such as AMD, which I'm going to talk about AMD, and Nvidia, right? Those are two of the biggest underperformers in the semiconductor group. You could have picked any other stocks within semiconductors and have done better. So there's so much of this that goes on Twitter where people are just not doing a lot of research, right? They're sticking to the same stocks, and that crowd mentality that you see on Twitter, it can really sometimes be a detriment versus people doing their analysis on thorough analysis versus just following a couple traders who just talk about the same stocks over and over. So I think that's pretty interesting. But for the day, AMD had some really nice performance. That said, AMD had some really nice performance to it. So this is a name that if you heard me on the TT Ameritrade Network, I was on there in the beginning of, I think it was Monday of last week. And that was one of my stocks that I had said I was getting long, and it gave a couple fake outs here, but once this AMD gets going, it can have momentum to it. So this was a nice trade for me today. I took some profits in AMD today, $90, and then I took a few targets. This was a little bit bigger of a position for me than normal. I guess 91.25. I thought I took another target too, but I guess not. For some reason, I thought 92, but yeah, it did get to. I mean, it closed right on the highs of the day. Also, speaking of the other underperformer, I think this looks kind of interesting here. It's Nvidia is coiled up and could be ready for a nice move. Now, it may take a little bit. There is this 1 hour virgin point of control that looks like it was just taken out here. So I would watch this name the next couple days because, like I said, it's been going sideways for a while. All right, so I would say stick with it. I saw some people in the room try to trade this the last couple days, Give yourself plenty of time. Give yourself an ample stop too, because if you traded this the last couple days, it just because it's boring doesn't mean it's not going to work. Boring for a couple days, so give yourself a little bit of time. But this thing does not look bad. The stock that I was going to just talk about too was we saw call buying right out of the gate in Skyworks. Skyworks Solutions. Again, another nice green candle. This again hasn't been one of the really strong performers like a Taiwan Semiconductor. MRVL has been very strong. Micron has been strong. LRCX has been strong. I mean, look at these stocks. Right, these are your leaders, right, in the semiconductors. Believe it or not. Applied Materials, right, $66 up to 82. Right? Do you see the difference now in the picture? Again, I'm watching Nvidia now. Maybe it makes a move, but it has not been one of the outperformers within the group. And Intel, Intel's the underperformer. There was some weekly out of the money calls that went up, I think at $49 today. But from just an overall relative basis, Intel has been the underperformer. All right, so moving on. So Skyworks, I was able to take a few targets in this one today. Lulu got out of some of this trade today. I love it when I can hit targets like this on the open. I waited, as I mentioned before, when the Nasdaq dipped. One name that reports earnings in a couple days. Again, I like the plays that names can kind of run into the earnings report, like Zoom did. I think, by the way, Zoom is a great example, right? What's Zoom doing here after hours? It's down, right? There's so many. I hate to keep saying retail traders. Maybe I'll come up with a different phrase, but again, I try to get traders up to speed so they're not making these types of mistakes. But the implied move, what the options were implying in Zoom, which I did not trade for earnings because it's just too expensive. The options are implying a 14% move, right? So you need a huge move for options to work. So the trades that I generally do for earnings are looking for a run into earnings. For a stock to rally into the report and then sell it on the day of earnings, or selling premium, like an iron condor, which we talked about doing that trade. I did not do that trade. But selling a put spread and selling a call spread, collecting money in case the stock doesn't move what the implied move, what the market makers are expecting. That has been the best trade I've seen so far. The majority of time for earnings, those two ways, right? If it's and it has to be a momentum name. Like if you're going to play a run into earnings, the ones that tend to work better, in my opinion, are high momentum names and ones with big short interest, right? Because shorts may end up covering going into the quarter, and then you take the trade off. You forget about the earnings event. You take the trade off on earnings day. Right, so that's what I'll be looking to do in CrowdStrike. And I did take a target in this one too. Again, I got my first target in. 152, paid 148 for this one. All right, I think I covered most of the trades. We talked about AMD. Again, you had to be a little bit patient with that one. So nice. I feel like I'm missing one. Apps. Sonos was a nice trade too. This one was just a day trade for me. Where did this thing? I mean, when something like this happens, right? If it's such a big move like this, I just take the money and put it in my pocket and be happy, right? Of course, I can maybe get more out of this in a swing trade, but to get something like this in a matter of 20 minutes, 16 minutes. I don't know. I'm happy with just taking the money and putting it in my pocket. 16 minutes. Move on to the next one when you get something like this. Yeah. Not to say it can't continue. I'll be watching it, but So really some nice price action in a lot of these names. And again, overall, like I'm not even catching, there's so many other names that the room did well today, and it's impossible to catch all of them. And again, I want to be responsible, in terms of, for me, not chasing, too many moves, because I do think that sentiment is high, and I want to be cognizant of that and be smart about my trading. But the room just hit so many trades and some of these spec names. These SPAC names are just unbelievable. When one of these names mentions one of these SPACs, mention it's going to convert over to the equity name. These things are just flying. So it's impressive to watch. All right, guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.